right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the little podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern day spiritual paradise. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, most importantly, a kid raised in Jehovah's Witnesses from the tender age of 5 through the 70s and 80s. And as always, I want to warn anyone that may have stumbled here or is new to listening, welcome. We would love for you to stay. We're creating a little bit of community and healing here. We try to have some fun. So each episode, and this one in particular, is going to feature lots of sarcasm, my own disturbing brand of humor, and more. But it is never meant to offend. So please don't take any offense. We just try to take a look at the current situation among Jehovah's Witnesses through the lens of myself and my own experiences as an elder going back, gosh, I'm looking at almost 4 decades now. Wow. First, I want to address a couple of headlines from the spiritual paradise of Jehovah's Witnesses this week. They're disturbing, okay? So be forewarned. Jesus has had his hands full, as has his guys in upstate New York, the governing body. And frankly, this is soul-crushing, so I just want to get it out of the way early because it makes me sick. Anyone who's listened knows I have a tendency to get emotional on some subjects. This is one of them, children. And at the same time, with what I'm about to share, if you haven't heard, I'm hopeful, and I'm really hopeful that this is the beginning of much more activity by legal authorities, that someone is going to do something. If you haven't heard, 5 Jehovah's Witnesses were charged with sexual abuse crimes, that's the best way to say it, by the Attorney General in the state of Pennsylvania in the United States. Precious little babies, children as young as 10 years old, that were abused by those chosen by Jehovah, including Spirit-appointed elders. That's right, those that the governing body claims are chosen and appointed to be elders by Holy Spirit. Disgusting, unmentionable crimes against precious, innocent babies that were reported to elders in each congregation and then subsequently hidden until the Attorney General got wind. I want to send love and hugs to all of those affected. There are thousands more that we don't know about, people. Thousands. Please speak out and protect children from the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses and the abuse that is hidden within its doors and walls. Second, while it deserves and will get a full episode on this podcast, the governing body's assault on gay people continues. Jesus' chosen guy, Kenneth Cook, has quite the hateful talk featured on video where he applies Revelation 11:18 to not just those that may litter, throw down a gum wrapper, or do worse things like oil spills, those polluting the earth, but now all gay people are destroying the earth. How? He doesn't say, but he is sure to channel his best Apostle Paul, reiterating the Mosaic Law in a hate-filled diatribe against 2 people whose only crime is loving one another. No word from Jesus in the Bible or since on how 2 people can or can't love each other. And so the governing body, in one of their featured videos this week, Kenneth Cook, Jesus guy, channeling Jesus apparently, continues his hate on innocent people who love one another, the gay community, and I am so sorry. Please create awareness for how hateful this is. Incredible. Okay, but let's lighten it up a little bit this week. We've had some emotional podcast episodes. We've had some emotional subjects. I'm going to lighten it up with some laughs. And look, while every subject here is ultimately painful or had a negative impact on all of us, or is having a negative impact on a current Jehovah's Witness, some of these subjects are just so absurd, so ridiculous, that all you can do is laugh. The levels of stupid in some of the counsel from the governing body can oftentimes reach a fever pitch. And for many of us in the 70s and 80s and beyond, we were gifted with lots of counsel on this very dangerous subject this week called entertainment. That's right, entertainment. If you know, you know. And there may be some of you out there from my generation as a young kid in the 70s, teenager in the 80s, who know exactly what I speak of. The endless barrage of counsel on entertainment. If you're keeping score, just to balance the scales here, while Satan was roaming the earth, while every government on earth was focused on destroying Jehovah's Witnesses, while people said no to life-saving blood transfusions, while children were in physical and mental danger, while women stayed in dangerous abusive marriages, while many didn't have food or water, and while diseases such as AIDS in the 80s ran rampant on the earth and was scaring everyone, Jesus turned his attention to the Tuesday night television lineup on ABC. He was very concerned that none of us start dressing or acting like Fonzie on Happy Days. This is true. So warning, we're going to talk entertainment, mostly television and movies, because music and video games and sports deserve their own episodes. We're going to take a look back here. And the absurdity is going to be laced with sarcasm. This is going to be its own different kind of episode, folks. While I've been out of this organization for 13 years, I'm sure it's more of the same today. In all things mind control, the governing body isn't afraid to dig into every aspect of a Jehovah's Witness life. That includes even how a witness may relax. That includes what they're reading, what they're watching, what they might be listening to. So let's take a look at the history of counsel, guidance, and discipline as administered by Jesus and his now 10 guys in upstate New York on all things entertainment. I realize that this may have changed, so this may be a bit of a time-dated episode for people of my generation. I'm not sure. I know that the counsel certainly applies. I know they've eased off on some of this stuff because they know how stupid they look. But we're going to talk about it anyway, because there were many of us whose lives were truly impacted by this stuff, as you will see. But before we do, keep in mind first that as a premise or a foundation stone of this subject of entertainment, that the governing body believes your entire life should be consumed with their organization. There are multiple meetings each week. I know that's changed, but there used to be, and it's changed a bit. But the dynamic hasn't. You should be studying for those meetings in their publications, of course. Once you've been to the meetings, you're then told or commanded to go out and share what you learned with any unsuspecting innocent person you may encounter, whether it's at work, whether it's at school, or just bring the message to them by parking in a random neighborhood and start knocking on their doors. But even that isn't enough. You should also be doing personal study when you have a moment, just a free few moments of downtime. It's a highly encouraged, almost commanded schedule that keeps a Jehovah's Witness busy and on the move and stressed out constantly. That's their premise. With the 24 hours in a day, it should belong to us. Oh yeah, we know. You need a little rest, a little downtime. And by the way, we're going to comment on that time too. See if you can pick up on the not-so-subtle counsel slipped into this nugget of Holy Spirit from the June 1st, 1979 Watchtower and the aptly titled article, What is Happening to Entertainment? Jehovah and Jesus are concerned. It says, quote, "So, Leisure time may be used to provide a change of pace from the regular routine or to find refreshment for continuing with one's customary work. These early Christians, while primarily active and zealous in proclaiming the kingdom message, found time occasionally for a change of pace that genuinely refreshed. End quote. So as you can see, and we've talked a lot about it on this show, cognitive dissonance, messaging, propaganda, even when you want to just sit down and be mindless for 5 minutes, you're often consumed with guilt or a sense of this strange anxiety in your gut that you should be doing more for Jehovah and his organization. After all, for every minute you kick back and drain your brain, people, innocent people, your schoolmates, your neighbors, the guys at the store, they're being sized up for a personal fireball from Jesus and his 10 buddies in New York. So relaxation in general is very, very hard to come by. And in my opinion, and has been discussed on the show in the past and will be in the future, it's that sense of unending guilt, tension, anxiety, do more, that in my opinion often contributes to the alcoholism and depression that is so widespread among Jehovah's Witnesses. If you're not feeling guilty for just needing to rest, you can now feel guilty for just about any form of entertainment you may enjoy while you sneak in a little rest. There are so many ways to entertain ourselves now. I recognize that. Times have changed, they've advanced. And today it's primarily by means of the internet, subject for another day. But as you might suspect, we're all supposed to feel sick for even wanting to be entertained or to watch a story that inevitably, as is the case in every story since the dawn of time, see their own holy book, that inevitably features good versus evil, or a character overcoming adversity. Where there is good, folks, there is bad. But the governing body says the following. They say the following about entertainment. In another nugget of Holy Spirit from the Watchtower of August 1st, 1980, pages 28 through 30, it says this, quote, "We dare not yield to any craving for bad entertainment." What follows is mind-numbing. Back to the quote, "The pleasure that imperfect humans get from things that God hates might be likened to the craving that a diabetic man has for sweets. Diabetes is largely an inherited disease, although indiscretion in eating and drinking or other factors can hasten its onset and aggravate its seriousness. Due to a faulty body chemistry, the victim has a strong craving for the very thing he should not have." Remember, this is about entertainment. "It calls to mind a line from Shakespeare. Your affections are a sick man's appetite, who desires most that which would increase his evil." End quote from Shakespeare. Yes, just as certain sick states are accompanied by cravings for that which would aggravate the sickness, so our inherited fallen tendencies incline us to do what is bad. End quote. So, depending on what the guys in upstate New York say is good versus bad entertainment, you may just be a demonized diabetic. You may just be a satanic diabetic, craving horrible things like rest, relaxation, and a good story that you really shouldn't. Because after all, as you saw in this quote, our bodies are faulty and we're all sick for even wanting to do this. So from there, and I could go on a rant about a million quotes like it, from there is the platform by which entertainment and the desire to be entertained or kick back, chill out, watch a good movie. From there, the messaging initiates that guilt, that anxiety, that feeling like, not only should I not be taking the time, but I'm a bad guy for even wanting to. So throughout the decades, at least in my small history here on the planet, entertainment within Jehovah's Witnesses came down to a few categories, I guess, for lack of a better word, if you will. Television, movies, music, sports, and as time went on, video games. We could add in the internet. It's changed, it's advanced, where we get our entertainment from and how we spend free time. And disclaimer, okay, I want to underline this for those that may comment on social media, on our YouTube channel, or anywhere else. There are some bad things that fall under entertainment. I'm not ignorant and ridiculous. You do have to use your brain, but I'm pretty sure you have one. And I'm also pretty sure that we all know what qualifies as, this is decent, this is rough, I don't like it, I'm uncomfortable, this is really bad. I think we're all old enough, and if you're a parent of a child, can guide a child enough to know, this is going out of bounds, or this isn't good for me. But with the governing body, it's always much worse. Everything's much worse. Every medium, every channel, every screen. It's all bad. It's all held up to a standard that is simply unrealistic in any way, shape, and form. And as we will see, the life of a Jehovah's Witness and how they entertain themselves is wrought with hypocrisy. And by the way, they can't escape it. They can't escape it. It's inevitable when compared to the standards of the governing body and their book, as we'll get to. So, but I want to take a few minutes here to concentrate on a couple of mediums. The mediums that I grew up on, the ones that still exist today, that I think are still very powerful. The internet has certainly trumped almost everything in 2023. But I want to take a look at television and movies. And let's start with television. The governing body throughout many decades has had a lot of thoughts on television. And it's interesting because you'd think they'd be a little too busy for it. But the primary thought is that it is deadly and it is dangerous. That's it. I could fill this entire episode with quote after quote after quote. I'm going to quote far too many, be forewarned, from their literature and their holy word regarding television and entertainment. Take a look at some of the wise and balanced counsel given by the guys in New York. Yeah, that's sarcasm. TV was a part of my childhood. We all had our favorite shows or cartoons. When we were disobedient to Jehovah, sarcasm, we would wake up as a kid in our pajamas, hoping and praying mom was making pancakes and French toast on a Saturday when we weren't out knocking on doors, and we would watch cartoons. It was the coolest thing ever. It was so cool. You've got eye boogers, a plate of pancakes, and you're watching Bugs Bunny. It was phenomenal. And I realize I'm showing my age, but I grew up watching, after the cartoons, late in a Saturday afternoon, things like Land of the Lost, Hanna-Barbera. There was Abbott and Costello Theater. I watched The Lone Ranger. Remember that one? On and on. People my age will remember. But to the governing body, especially in the 70s and 80s, and I absolutely believe it's true today, television was mostly just a tool of Satan. Listen to how the governing body portrays all things TV. And remember, I know there's bad stuff on TV. I'm not being stupid. But the lengths to which the governing body go to is unbelievable. Let's take a look at what the governing body gave kids my age and kids today in terms of counsel on television. Under the Awake of 1985, February 22nd, pages 18 through 20, How Can I Stop Watching So Much TV? We get this, quote, I find television almost irresistible. When the set is on, I cannot ignore it. I can't turn it off. As I reach out to turn off the set, the strength goes out in my arms. So I sit there for hours and hours. An immature youth? No. This was the pitiful plight of a college English instructor, end quote. The strength went out of his body, this poor professor. Look, I'm a guy. I don't watch much TV. I kind of hate it, to be honest now. But if it's on and I walk through, guys are all eyes. We turn and stop. Wait, what's this about? What's going on? Yeah, that is the power of television, right? But the strength went out of his body. He was lunging for the channel and he couldn't turn the television off. But it gets worse. From the same article, quote, I've been having a state of depression. I'm going out of my mind, end quote. 12-year-old Susan. Right there in the spirit-inspired literature of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses in 1985. We aren't sure why Susan's parents, I should say, allowed her to be interviewed by the Watchtower, or if Susan ever even really existed. But apparently, she wasn't getting the mental health help she needed. And clearly, watching the Brady Bunch on a Saturday can have dangerous physical side effects, as seen by this instructor and by 12-year-old Susan. So for those that doubt that the governing body wants to get involved in every phase of your life, I give you television, where they have all kinds of comments and horrifically negative counsel to anyone who is considering, what should I do with all this television stuff? But it continues. What are people saying about television? An article from April 22nd, I should say, in 1978 out of the illustrious Awake magazine. It says this, quote, television's attraction is such that when one woman's set broke down, she said, it's like somebody in the family just died. Some admitted to being TV intoxicated, needing a daily fix of it, as a drug addict would need drugs. One person said, I took to TV like an alcoholic to demon rum. I was hooked. He watched it for days at a time, once for 4 straight days and nights, with only a little sleep intervening. End quote. Imagine this guy if you knew about Netflix. It continues, quote, in Japan, Mrs. Kamiko Takasawa, a leader of the Society for Responsible Television, said the TV has brought about our cultural destruction. This is 1978. And the Melbourne, Australia Sun reported television viewing can have the same effect as severe brain damage. End quote. The governing body, with proper food at the proper time to Jehovah's Witnesses in 1978, the 80s, and as we'll see, every other decade. And this is a very small look at thousands of references regarding television to Jehovah's Witnesses. It causes brain damage. You're like a drug addict. I'm like an alcoholic to demon rum. I'm 12 and in a mass depression. I'm a college professor, and my body goes limp as I reach for the TV. But you can't blame the governing body here, folks. You can't. First, Jesus wanted this message to get out to his people, right? He's using them since 1919, well before television. Second, I thought it would be helpful, and I also show how thankful we are to the governing body for such wise counsel. I thought it would be helpful if I would give you a sample size, just a sample size, of the top television shows in 1978 that, as they claim, brought about cultural destruction and severe brain damage, as I just read to you. Are you ready for the top shows of 1978 on television that were destroying this guy's mind as a 10 and 11-year-old that year? The number one show in the nation on television in the United States was a little show called Laverne and Shirley. Yes, you might remember them. Sing the song with me. Incorporated. I don't even know the words. But rest in peace, Cindy Williams, by the way. Laverne and Shirley. We were being warned. The second one was Three's Company. Now, hey, let's face it. Three's Company had some really funny jokes. It was a little sexualized. A guy pretending to be gay, living with 2 women. We remember it. We remember the Ropers. Who doesn't love Mr. Roper and those facial expressions? Stephen Lett could take a lesson or two from him. Three's Company. Number 3 was a horribly demonized show called Mork and Mindy in 1978. Robin Williams, rest in peace, to a brilliant comedian. A brilliant comedian. He was an alien from a faraway place. Ooh, this sounds demonized. It was a sitcom. It featured him in rainbow suspenders, him saying nanu nanu. I could go on. My generation will get it. Number 4 was a horrific show, one that I'm very surprised the governing body didn't go on a whole district convention symposium about, called Happy Days. You might remember it. It was set in the 50s, which is weird because you think the governing body and the way they viewed life in this planet, from pants to how we shouldn't have beards and everything else, should love Happy Days. Nope. No. Brain damage and cultural destruction. The 5th show was Angie. You might remember Donna Pescow, that little minx who was from Saturday Night Fever. We'll get into that. Number 7 was MASH. Number 11 was 8 is Enough. Highly horrific family drama about a man who has 8 kids. They have a stepmom, and they traverse the world of family life together. Number 12 in 1978 was Charlie's Angels, my favorite. Look, I was in love with Jacqueline Smith. Subject for another day. And number 14, a truly demonic entry into the world of television, a show called Little House on the Prairie. Now, I know only a certain age group will remember these shows, but if you're a younger person born in the 90s or 2000s listening, you can now see these demon-inspired forms of entertainment on Nick at Night on Nickelodeon. But the point is this. Whether you're of my generation that was getting counsel about brain damage, cultural destruction, you're a drug addict, and you're going to be depressed at 12, or you're of the generation today, the message from the governing body on television entertainment is always the same. Meeting parts, public talks, convention dramas, videos, young people ask books, the youth book. They're littered. They almost all are littered or have devoted chapters with endless counsel on the dangers of television and its satanic influence over the planet Earth. But before I move on to the big screen, I want to give you one final warning from the faithful and discreet slave, now just the 10 guys in upstate New York. It comes to us from the Awake of 1995, August 22nd, pages 28 through 29, under the article Toys That Inspire Violence. It says, quote, "A TV program about teenagers who transform, as by magic, into martial arts warriors has become the craze among children in the United States. The TV characters are known as the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. School authorities are concerned over what seems to be obsessive behavior displayed by small children, imitating the violent acts of the Power Rangers. The Wall Street Journal reports that in a recent study, 96% of teachers polled say they have witnessed a Morphin-inspired act of aggression. In some cases, the children are as young as 3 years of age. Small children may suddenly turn into frenzied, brawling boxers, says the journal." End quote. There's one for the kids of the 90s from the governing body. I can personally confirm I never watched or played Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I was actually a ministerial servant by now. I was probably giving local needs parts on this and don't remember it. I cannot, however, say the same about, I don't know, this, we used to call it Cowboys and Indians. You know, the same aggressive acts where we turned into frenzied, brawling boxers with our obsessive behavior, where we committed Morphin-inspired acts of aggression. Look. Again, I'm not being ridiculous. Yes, I guess I am. It's the mood. There's plenty of garbage on television, and being a couch potato is bad for your health. It's not good, okay? But with Jehovah's Witnesses, it's a steady barrage of fearful warnings and guilt. With everything, it's everything, television included. To me, it's a lot like riding a bike. Can you fall off your bike? Can you get hurt? For those of us that had the metal pedals, can you scrape your shin? Can you skin your knee? Yeah, you can. But I think I'm smart enough to figure out how to ride the bike. I think I'll learn how to do it. But that isn't the real reason the governing body has all this to say about television entertainment, this crap that they continue to dredge out. Here's one of the real reasons. Are you ready? The Watchtower of 1992, July 1st, pages 26 through 29. And you'll know it when you hear it in the aptly titled article, Busy in Dead Works or in Jehovah's Service. Quote, for example, and listen folks, here's the real reason. Here's the real reason. They don't want you spending an hour or two watching the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, The Simpsons, Charlie's Angels, you name a show. It says this, for example, is much of your energy and time being expended on TV viewing, recreation, mundane reading, or hobbies? Entertainment? According to an article in the New York Times, the average adult in the United States indulges in just about 30 hours a week of TV viewing. Surely, such time could be put to better use. And here it comes. The wife of one traveling overseer reports, I almost completely excluded all time wasters, such as watching television. The result? She was able to read the 2-volume Bible encyclopedia, Insight on the Scriptures, in its entirety, end quote. Published by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York. Thank you, wife, anonymous wife of anonymous traveling overseer, who we can neither confirm nor deny that she completely cut out her television watching and she was able to read our publication, 2-volume set. If you remember them, they probably weigh 7 pounds apiece. They're thicker than any book you're going to see today, probably. She was able to polish them both off by just turning off her television and giving up on her favorite TV show, probably Family Guy, right? Or South Park? No chance. Television. And the governing body spent millions of pages coming after us, as I stated, on all things entertainment. But TV, of course, was an evil demon. Not only could it take you out of doing what they want you to do, reading their books and getting those books into the hands of others, but it supposedly would make you depressed, inspire you into being a horrible human being. It was dangerous, deadly, and we got hit with this over and over again. We had modern day dramas on district convention parts. While they're careful to not put too much of the show's name in print, probably for obvious legal reasons, on convention parts and public talks on Sundays, we got hit constantly with the dangers of television. In the 70s, a lot in the 80s, with the incoming demonic-inspired MTV and all the stuff that came with it, subject for another show, but it's truly incredible. I want to shift gears because nothing is safe in the world of entertainment. Jehovah and Jesus are very concerned. I want to shift to Jehovah's Witnesses and the movies. Oh boy. The movies. I used to love the movies. It was a big event for us as kids. Big event. There was no internet. There was no cell phones. None of that stuff. The movies was a big event when the family went to the theater. Still has a special feeling when I go, which is very, very rare, if I'm being honest. Can't even remember the last one. When I was a kid, movies were everything. I grew up a couple of blocks away, no exaggeration, from George Lucas, when and while he was writing Star Wars and Indiana Jones. True story. The studio, Industrial Light and Magic, was about 3 blocks from my house. I'd ride my bike in the parking lot, no joke, in the 70s. It was incredible, and I look back on all of it with incredible fondness. But wow, did Jesus and his guys have some very mixed messages on the movies, motion pictures. And as a kid, it might be one of your earliest exposures to a little word called hypocrisy. Of course, most movies were just evil, right? Violence, sex, lying, stealing, drinking, and they were all designed by Satan, not just for the world, but specifically to trap us as Jehovah's Witnesses. And in that time, in the 70s and 80s, I don't know how true this is today. I'm looking forward to comments. For us, it was all about the rating system, what it was rated. And while you'll have a hard time finding it in print, the governing body is and was masterful at slipping their messages into talks, convention parts, dramas, etc. In my era, you simply were not allowed under any circumstances to see an R-rated movie. Was absolutely frowned upon. And if you were an elder or a ministerial servant, you were removed if you were caught going to an R-rated movie, or with the incoming video players and DVD players, if someone found out you watched it privately at your house. I saw it happen. I also saw men not appointed due to someone seeing their DVD collections in their house at a dinner. True story. They saw controversial PG-13, but if there was an R-rated DVD in there, dead meat. Dead meat. You were not only removed, but you wouldn't be appointed if someone knew you were watching R-rated movies. As a kid, I was in a group that walked out of a movie because they were cussing and the actors were talking about magic. This was common among Jehovah's Witnesses of my generation. I'm not kidding. For those of you old enough that might be listening, I know you know. And again, I want to say, look, not all entertainment is good for you, okay? Some of it is downright bad. It really is. There's some things I cannot and will not watch. I will not take in. It has a visceral physical reaction in me. You could probably guess what some of those things are. But with Jehovah's Witnesses, not only did the warnings apply to the most mundane mainstream movies, they seemed to miss some painfully obvious hypocrisy along the way, including the fact that most of them watch it all anyway. They did. Marvel, superhero movies, Star Wars, science fiction movies, war movies, Apocalypse Now, Saving Private Ryan, you name it. They're watching it anyway. And let me tell you, with the governing body, no genre of movie was safe. There were the many, many obvious warnings against horror movies, anything with the demons and the occult, and slasher movies of the 80s that were wildly popular. But there were just as many references and counsel about science fiction, fantasy, or romance. I can tell you that the biggest no-nos of my youth that I listened to talks in the Kingdom Hall on, that I saw at district conventions at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, were on movies such as Saturday Night Fever in the late 70s. Oh, it was just seen as the most disgusting, gross, immoral movie of all time. And then the other one that comes to mind in the 70s was obviously The Exorcist. In the 80s, it was Poltergeist. And there was even people that were dead set against Close Encounters of the Third Kind because aliens are really just demons. But imagine my surprise when I finally saw Saturday Night Fever as an adult. By the way, probably the greatest soundtrack arguably in the world. I'm going to go Purple Rain, Prince right in there with it. Incredible music, my music. But when I saw the movie finally as an adult, and truly I sat there watching it sinfully, thinking, this is what all the hubbub was about? This is what all the counsel was about? This is what I was hearing about from the stage of the convention? I was like, my God, this is on 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock sitcoms on TV now. But I can't begin to tell you how that movie got vilified when I was a kid. Vilified. All things motion picture and all genres were on the table for counsel from the governing body. Let's go with science fiction. From Watching the World of the Awake of 1984, January 22nd, it says this. Whatever else the proliferation of science fiction movies is doing, it may be changing the image of God in the minds of some of today's youth. The grandfather and father images of God don't do anything for me, explains a 17-year-old quoted in the newspaper USA Today. God is more of a spirit, like the Force in Star Wars and The Return of the Jedi. Anonymous, 17-year-old. There's so much to unpack with that stupid quote. They don't care. The images of God as a grandfather and father, something regularly said in a watchtower, don't do anything for him. God's more of a spirit. Yeah, that's what we've come to learn. But like the Force in Star Wars, are you literally using a science fiction movie to describe Jehovah? No hypocrisy or irony there. Science fiction and the messaging to us is trying to change Jehovah. By the way, Chewie and Mr. Spock could not be reached for comment. It was an anonymous 17-year-old. And let me just say here, I mentioned I grew up down the street from George Lucas. Star Wars is one of my favorite movies, always will be, don't care. Not just the nostalgia, but I love the story. And it was huge during my childhood. It features good, bad, magical powers, violence, a special group of chosen guys, little teddy bears on a paradise planet. Wait a minute. Wait a minute, let me see. There was a lot of talk about Star Wars being bad. And there was good guys, bad guys, magical powers, violence against a special group of chosen guys, the Jedi, teddy bears on a paradise planet. This sounds familiar, governing body. But science fiction was evil. Our story is not. That was the messaging. And as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, when Star Wars came out, I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, even at that age, I was able to look at this and go, wait a second here. But let's talk about the horror genre. The Awake of July 22nd, 1990, doesn't matter what movies I see, has this to share with us from Jesus, quote, consider how one audience reacted to a recent horror spoof involving a razor-fingered maniac, wonder who that could be, who slashed his way through a series of scenes. They cheered the bloodletting killer on. Led along by the mind-manipulating camera, the audience seemingly lost its sense of values and all comparison for the victims, end quote. Apparently, the governing body thinks that their people lost all sense of character. They probably left the theater and got some racer stuff and went around acting like Freddy. Freddy Krueger was supposed to be nicer people. And how about that audience showing up to a horror film, knowing what it's about, and not having any values or compassion for the victims? Welcome to the Council of the Governing Body. I couldn't help as I read this quote thinking, wonder how Tony Morris sizes up against this when he's lighting matches, blowing them out, and talking about split open hot dogs and guts. Nope. Don't go to horror movies. Come see me, Tony. Or, in that time period, you show up for some spiritual food and you're treated to this encouragement from The Awake of 1980, pages 29 through 31 under Watching the World. Remember that great section, folks? Quote, when the motion picture about demon possession, Exorcist II, was shown recently on U.S. television, a mother and her 4-year-old daughter in Wichita Falls, Texas, reportedly watched it together. Oh, family night, popcorn. One scene is said to depict the cutting out of a girl's heart to get rid of a demon. The little Texas girl was later found murdered in the same fashion. Her mother was charged with the homicide, end quote. Thank you, governing body, for the council in the Awake of 1980. I don't have any feelings on Exorcist. I think it's hilariously stupid. But they took, obviously this mother was a perfectly balanced soccer mom, mentally and emotionally, right? It was seeing The Exorcist that changed her, right? This is the kind of stuff the governing body would feed us from the stage in the literature, as I've just shown here, about movies. A Jehovah's Witness is regularly treated to people. There's always room for an experience with the governing body. They're always anonymous, or they only get their first name. We rarely even get where they live or what country they live in. But a Jehovah's Witness is regularly treated to people who broke away from the evil lure of a good matinee. And here is one such example. And again, why am I sharing this? Because just imagine we're not in 2023. We're in 1990 right now, and this is the spiritual food they're pumping you with. But this example brings us even closer to date. It's from the Watchtower of 2006, June 15th, pages 12 through 15, under Yes, You Can Find Happiness. Let's meet someone who broke away from the evils of movies. Quote, Mary, born in Scotland, we got some detail here, also learned that a fine relationship with Jehovah is vital if one is to find happiness. Before learning Bible truth, she related, I enjoyed watching horror movies. But at night, I couldn't go to sleep without holding a cross in my hand to ward off ghosts and vampires, which many of the films were about. I think she just says horror movies, right? Okay. Back to the quote. Once I learned the truth, however, and stopped watching such films, my relationship with Jehovah made it possible for me to go to bed without fear, happy to serve a God more powerful than demons or imagined vampires. End quote. Oh no. Oh no. The fifth grade reading level and the fabricated stories. They bring back so many memories. Oh, Mary of Scotland. Where do I start with this spiritual food from the governing body in 2006? First, Mary, do you even really exist? We're not sure. It's never confirmed. There's just so much to unpack. She is quoted as saying here, before she learned Bible truth, she enjoyed watching horror movies. Well, I can see why she loved the Bible then. Unless you don't consider murder a little horrifying. And hey, that's just Jehovah in the first book. Babies, puppies, woolly mammoths, innocent mothers, they all get drowned in the flood. But then it moves into such timely, non-horrific, according to Mary of Scotland, into non-horrifying subjects such as incest. See Lot having sex with his daughters after his wife turns into salt. Giants beating people up. Kings raping other men's wives and killing children. On and on. Yeah, the Bible was probably right up Mary's horror-loving movie fans' alley, right? But then she found Jehovah's Witnesses. She stopped watching scary movies and graduated to scenes of Armageddon. Fireballs, earthquakes, little girls falling into pits in the earth, birds eating people's intestines, and good old Toni Morris talking about split open corpses and, like a hot dog on a grill, blows out a match. I'm glad Mary is sleeping better, but I'm a little confused. Are you? It's because she serves a God that is more powerful than demons, but sent those same demons to earth to live with me and Mary, to live with us. And he's more powerful than imagined vampires, because the demons aren't imagined, only the vampires are. And you gotta love that God and the demons, in this one sentence, get the old confirmation that God and the demons are real in comparison to imagined vampires. I gotta tell you, I just love the 10 guys in upstate New York. The level of stupidity, ignorance, and absurdity. Mary cut out horror movies, and we should too. But then she graduated to the truth, as told by these 10 guys, who they openly admit are going to kill people, split them open, and they lean on a book that features some of the most heinous human crimes you can possibly put to print. Mary, good luck. If you're real, listen in. We hope you're doing better, and glad to hear that you're at least able to sleep at night. But listen, it doesn't stop there with the governing body on all things movies. You know what really was still on their radar? Kids' movies. Kids' movies weren't safe either. I'm just going to touch on one that was really, in my childhood, the quintessential kids' movie of my time. It's a little movie called E.T. That little goofy alien, the little goofy guy that taught people about friendship, healing, and how to bring people together. That little goofy guy, he wasn't spared from the governing body's ire or counsel either. We were all warned. In the awake of 1983, July 8th, page 27, under the aptly titled article, Christ or E.T.? We get this. And I'm going to read 3 paragraphs because they're gold. Quote, interestingly, many have noted parallels in the story to that of the life of Jesus Christ, said Professor Albert E. Miller, Jr. I think the thing that struck me most was the idea of the capacity to heal, and then when E.T. died and was resurrected. We have in E.T. then an enchanting, Messiah-like figure that gives momentary emotional release to our need for a true friend with powers greater than ours. Therein lies the movie's great appeal. It continues, quote, despite its seemingly Christian message, what? However, the movie subtly condones youthful misbehavior. In an early scene, we find youths playing Dungeons and Dragons in a smoke-filled room with a lighted cigarette on the table. Later on, when E.T. gets drunk sampling beer, oh my God, and Elliot, in telepathic sympathy, feels the effects, what? It is all portrayed as something cute. Further, some of the language used by these children is gross profanity. This, along with the supernatural aspects of the movie, has bothered many Christians. The quote continues, whether parents or their children see this movie is, of course, a matter of personal choice. But because of the movie's great popularity, let us not forget that it becomes an effective vehicle for sugarcoating youthful conduct that is definitely wrong. End quote. And there you have it. E.T. has been judged by the 10 guys in upstate New York. Anybody associated with this movie is doomed to a fireball or to be swallowed by the earth, whose guts will be eaten by birds. Damn you, E.T., and damn you, Drew Barrymore. You sugarcoated some of the most evil conduct I've ever been exposed to as a kid. And we all know E.T. was just Jesus anyway. Because no one can heal someone else, be their friend, or create a group of friends unless it has somehow to do with Jesus and the 10 guys in upstate New York. Oh, God. Oh, man. E.T. That's right, folks, E.T. If you've got it on your shelf and you're a Jehovah's Witness, please, no, don't. Don't ever talk to an elder, but you get the point. And all of this cracks me up. All of this cracks me up at my age now when I see the modern-day masterpiece that is Caleb and Sophia videos. The first episode of that whole series, led by Tony Morris, I might add, he of Match Burnout and Guts and Hot Dogs, the first one was my favorite. It was entitled, You Can't Be Jehovah's Friend If You Like Magic. That was the whole subject of the video. Or as seen in the video, you can't be Jehovah's friend if you have a plastic wizard toy. But none of that wise counsel from the governing body stops any Jehovah's Witness from watching Cinderella, Fantasia, or even better, planning family vacations to the magic kingdom known as Disneyland. No hypocrisy here, folks. To further my point that while they're railing against movies, the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses ignore it. They are clearly sinning, that Jesus and Jehovah are very upset about it, and this could absolutely call into question your judgment, therefore, whether you should be in paradise. But again, damn you, E.T., damn you, Ferris Bueller, damn you, The Breakfast Club. Where do you even begin? There you have Jehovah's Witnesses and entertainment as seen through television and movies, and the endless millions of pages of counsel from guys that we're supposed to believe are getting their messaging from Jesus himself. It can't go without notice. Jesus never mentioned any of this, and we need to talk about that. The irony and the hypocrisy. The irony of counseling Jehovah's Witnesses on what to watch on TV and movies, and comparing TV and movies to their own literature, illustrations, and videos. Do you see where I'm going here? TV and movies are bad, and everything in them is bad. You're never going to be able to find one that's sanitized or sterile enough for the governing body. But then, as a child, or even as an adult who's getting this counsel, you start to lean back and go, wait a minute. What happens when I compare the governing body stuff to the movies and TV, their own literature, illustrations, and video? I give you the Awake of August 12th, pages 4 through 5, in the article Infatuated with Violence. Under the subheading Movies, it says this: studies show that violence, sex, and profanity have increased significantly in movies, and ratings may not be a reliable guide. Moreover, it is not just the bad guys who are violent. Hone in on that. Moreover, it is not just the bad guys that are violent. Nearly half the violence depicted on TV, in the movies, and in music videos is committed by the good guys, according to one study. End quote. Hey, 10 guys in upstate New York. Have you seen your own literature and videos lately? You currently have an entire video on your website addressing the concerns of Jehovah's Witness parents who wrote in very angry and upset with the level of violence you're showing in your videos. That's right, the violence from the good guys. If you haven't seen this, I encourage anyone listening to go watch. Toni Morris followed it up with a second video basically telling parents to quit bitching. Quit sending in your letters. Quit telling us how to write these scripts, these videos, these movies we're pumping out that, by the way, you pay for. That they're going to keep on featuring violence. They think it's necessary. He literally sits there, looks into the camera, and gaslights millions of Jehovah's Witnesses and basically tells them to grow up. The same guy on Sundays buying baskets full of liquor. The same guy who calls himself one of the good guys. And yet his reference says that most of the violence in TV and movies is done by the good guy. It's just a soup, a barrel of cognitive dissonance subjected to the mind and eyes and hearts of Jehovah's Witnesses. In the Awake of October of 2006, pages 4 through 7, in the article TV, The Subtle Instructor, What About Sex and Violence in the Bible? That's the subheading. It says this: what is the difference between the violence and sex shown on TV and that described in the Bible? The references to sex and violence in the Bible are written to instruct, not to entertain. God's word records historical fact. Subject for a whole episode. It helps us to understand God's viewpoint on matters and to learn from the mistakes of others. End quote. Wait a minute, governing body, defending your own sex and violence found in the Bible. When it comes to all things entertainment, it's obvious that you have a huge problem as a Jehovah's Witness, or frankly, as any religious person or reader of the Bible. For one, it's not a huge reach to arrive at an obvious conclusion. The first one being literally zero, and I mean nothing, in terms of entertainment in today's world matches any of the principles or verses from an ancient book written to shepherds, goat farmers, and nomads. You're not going to be able to line it up. You can try. I know I did. And that's where you get the guilt, the fear, the bad conscience, the lazy feeling, you name it. The writers of the Bible didn't see MTV or YouTube coming. I guarantee it, okay? They didn't know there would be a box that could transmit images or music apps or movie theaters or any of it. They didn't know. So for one, you've got a huge problem when you try to reason that the Bible could actually give you any sense of guidelines on matters of entertainment. You can't. You can take any of the good principles and morals, and there's some in the Bible, and apply them in every phase of life. But it's quite the reach in matters of entertainment, especially when the book itself highlights some of the most hideous human behavior you will ever see. And we're supposed to believe that that's for our instruction, not for our entertainment. I can tell you, and I believe it was Judges 9, where Ehud goes and takes a sword and plunges it into Eglon's belly, and it describes how the sword's going in and the fat is going over the sword. When I got bored at meetings as a kid, that's the verse and chapter I went to, and I read it over and over again, giggling and laughing. Why? Because I was a boy and I like swords. But I'm not supposed to be entertained. I'm supposed to learn a lesson from that. Incredible. What lesson? What lesson are we learning from the Bible when when angels are wanting to be raped by the homosexual population of Sodom and Gomorrah, but Lot says, "No, take my daughters, rape them instead." I'm tuned in for the lesson. But for two, I have another question. What rating do you think the Bible would get as a book, movie, source of entertainment, TV show? What rating would the Bible get if it was a major motion picture or television show? What could a screenwriter do with the word of Jehovah, according to the governing body? Let's see. It's very boring, right? It's very boring. Imagine the type of rating you would get for the Bible under the modern day standards if shown accurately on a screen. I mean, when I read stuff like this, I wonder who plays Cain after he murders Abel. Then he has sex with his own sister? Waiting for the lesson, governing body. Do we dial up The Rock and Jason Momoa to play buff demon dudes having sex with a lower, imperfect life form? Don't make me say it, being careful here. Human females? Then they have baby giants? Give me your best guess on who plays Lot and his two daughters, and they have a few drinks, and then never mind. How about King David? That'd be a cool plot line, right? King with thousands of women and wives, stalks and spies on another man's wife taking a bath, assaults her, has her husband killed, brings her back to his place permanently to be his wife, gets a baby killed over the whole ordeal, claims to love his buddy Jonathan more than women. The governing body does not approve of that entry. Counts his army, then lets 20,000 innocent people get killed for it in a census sin. On and on and on. Who plays King David? Ooh, that'd be a good one. Taking just a few examples, I ask you, what would the holy word of God himself be rated today? R rating? Triple X? But the same warnings and counsel don't apply in matters of entertainment to the Bible itself. We're getting counsel and entertainment out of a book that features rape, incest, violence, genocide, drowning of babies and puppies, on and on and on. Let me tell you, the Bible Stories book alone sent this kid's brain into several fearful spins, and I know I'm not alone. At least in a movie, you get popcorn and some hot tamales. By the way, mix those together. Highly recommend that. And for three, you think God wrote this, right? Governing body, you think he wrote this. Well, if he did, and if Jesus is directing 10 guys in upstate New York, shouldn't he have been more clear about all things entertainment? Shouldn't we find prophecies telling us to stay away from Stranger Things or Ozzy Osbourne? Can we use these things called our brains to make personal decisions? If you think I'm being absurd, please note that all the aforementioned counsel from the 10 guys in New York didn't come from the Bible. They lifted words written to local nomads and sheep herders and applied them to modern day entertainment. And they admit it. But as I stated earlier, aside from stating the obvious, which could be summed up with use your brain when considering entertainment, it isn't about that at all. With the governing body and Jehovah's Witnesses, it's about control. It's about control. In the Watchtower of 2022, October, pages 6 through 11, under You Can Find True Happiness, the governing body says to do this when it comes to entertainment. It says, in his letter to the Philippians, the Apostle Paul urged Christians to continue considering things that are righteous, chaste, lovable, and virtuous. Although Paul was not writing specifically on the subject of entertainment, thanks for confirming, what he wrote should influence the pastimes that we choose. Try this. Wherever the word things appears in the verse, substitute it with the word songs, movies, novels, or video games. Doing this can help you to discern which ones may be acceptable in God's view and which ones may not be. We want to bring our life into harmony with Jehovah's lofty standards. End quote. What? What? I'm absolutely certain the Bible, the same book, says not to go beyond the things written. But are you 10 kings in upstate New York here encouraging me and everyone else that reads your literature to go beyond the things written? You're that desperate to comment on entertainment? On entertainment. And we're trying to bring our standards into a line with Jehovah, the same guy who wrote this book that you're telling us to add our own words to, the same guy that has rape, pillaging, murder, death, baby drowning, genocide. What? Do you see the morass of confusion that anyone with 4 brain cells can find themselves in, whether consciously or subconsciously? Behold, the governing body, and on this matter of entertainment, how they counsel their people. Their own paragraphs, their own counsel is filled with insanity, hypocrisy. It's just incredible. Soon I predict there will be new light, since there's 2 new kings, on what socks to wear and how to put them on. Because they go to that level to control their people. Entertainment is just one of the best examples of trying to take a book that in itself, let's be honest, whether you believe or not, I respect that, has very questionable storylines, principles, and history. Trying to take that book and wedge it into matters of entertainment, instead of letting a common Jehovah's Witness, a publisher, learn how to navigate on their own. I give to you the governing body in a snapshot in a long-winded episode on all things entertainment, including television and movies. So in conclusion, I only ask this in conclusion. Does anyone listening have any good Netflix recommendations? I want to thank you for joining me this week. I appreciate all of you, the comments, the DMs. I try to get to all of them. And again, thanks for supporting this little show. Hopefully we're all having a good laugh today. Voice is cracking, hitting puberty. But I want to thank you again for listening into this great show. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next week.